Hey.
Hey, you.
Yeah, you. Are you planning to hike the Pacific Crest Trail next year? Well, then I've got some tips for you on things you need to do before you start your hike. And by the way, this video is generally from the perspective of going northbound because most people are going northbound and I myself went northbound. First things first, you're gonna need a permit. The easiest way to go about this is to get a permit through the Pacific Crest Trail Association. You can get a long distance permit that will cover the entire trail, and these are available to you if you're gonna hike 500 or more miles on the PCT. However, these permits are competitive, so you might be unsuccessful in getting a permit. If that's the case, you can go off of local permits. You can use local permits for the entire PCT if you need to. I have an entire video on how to get the local permits, what the process is like. Check that out if you're interested. I'll put it up here and in the show notes as well. Tip number 2. Sorry, the crows are really going off. If you are planning to use a backpacking stove on the PCT, then you're going to need to get a California fire permit. These permits are not just for making campfires, they do include stoves as well. You can get them online from CAL FIRE at permit.preventwildfiresca.org, and they are free. However, you will need to watch a video and pass a quiz in order to get this permit. The permit is valid from the time that you take it through the end of the year. So if you're hiking the PCT in 2026, you do not want to obtain the permit until 2026. Note that if you are planning to have fires as well as use your stove, there are restrictions locally, regionally, depending on where you are. So just make sure that you check those restrictions. Just because you have a fire permit doesn't mean you can just have a fire anywhere. Next tip. Brush up on leave no trace principles. The PCT faces a lot of use, I would say overuse and overcrowding, and we are so blessed to be able to recreate in these areas, so it's all of our responsibility to keep them pristine. Next tip, if you are going northbound in the normal PCT through hiker season, there's a good chance that you're going to be going through the San Jacinto Wilderness when there is snow and ice on the ground, which means that you might need your microspikes and you might need your ice axe. If you're very early, you might even need crampons. Who knows? So I would recommend Googling San Jacinto John Report, bookmarking that page. This is a gentleman who shares trail conditions in the San Jacinto Wilderness and gives recommendations on what gear that you might need. And he does this pretty regularly. He gives great tips and great advice, so I would recommend following along with that website and looking at far out and just trying to get a sense of what conditions are going to be like when you're there and being prepared for those conditions. So that likely means sending your winter gear to either Idlewild or Paradise Valley Cafe outside of Idlewild before going into the San Jacinto Wilderness. This section of the trail is pretty difficult and can be pretty hairy. People have died in this section by being ill-prepared, so make sure that you're not one of those people risking your life for no reason. Be prepared for the conditions and have the gear that you need when you get there. On that note, if you don't have any experience traversing through snow and ice and steep slopes, maybe try to get some before you go out to the PCT, because depending on when you go through, you might be facing this in the San Jacinto Wilderness, near Mount Baden-Powell, and very likely in the High Sierra. These sections are no joke, especially when there is snow and ice on the ground. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you're prepared when you get there and hopefully have some experience before you go through. I can promise you, you're gonna have a much better experience if you do practice walking through snow and ice, using your ice axe, etc. before you go into these areas. The first time I walked through the High Sierra on the John Muir Trail, I had plenty of snow experience, but I was not prepared for how tough and how scary that section could be. So I did not have the best time on the JMT. But I will tell you, because I was much more experienced the next time around going through on the PCT, I had an absolute blast. So I guess it really depends on how safe you want to be and how much fun you want to have when you get there. I don't think, though, that it's a bad idea to take a snow skills class ahead of getting, especially to the Sierra. Next tip, you're going to want to put a resupply box together for Kennedy Meadows South to go into the Sierra. You definitely can buy food and supplies in Kennedy Meadows South, both at the general store and at Grumpy Bear's Retreat. However, I do recommend that you at least send ahead your micro spikes or crampons if you're very early in the season, your ice axe, your bear can, unless you're renting one, and then some resupply items, food items as well, since you are already going to be sending a box, because it's pretty remote at Kennedy Meadows, so things can be pretty pricey. If you have a special diet, you might want to consider sending other resupply boxes to other locations. I'll make another video at some point about the locations that I recommend sending resupply boxes to, but I think generally you can do this along the trail. Like, you can stop in a bigger trail town and send a box ahead somewhere. You don't have to do it before you start the trail, and I honestly don't really recommend doing that anyway, because you don't know what you're going to be hungry for, and you don't know what food you're going to be sick of and hate by the time you get to whatever location. Next up, do some shakedown hikes ahead of going out to the PCT. Test out your gear, test it out in all kinds of conditions, make sure it works for you. And I would say especially test out your shoes while carrying a pack that is the normal weight that you're going to be carrying out on the PCT. I can't tell you how many people I met who were having foot issues, whether it was plantar fasciitis or Achilles issues or whatever, and they all swore it was not their shoes because they'd been running in those shoes forever, or they'd been hiking in those shoes forever, but they had never hiked 15 to 20 to 25 to 30 miles a day wearing those shoes with a pack on. It makes a difference. So please test out your gear, and especially your shoes, before you get out there. And speaking of injuries, I would recommend following Blaze Physio on social media. She is a physical therapist who follows the PCT hiker bubble and books appointments both online and in person to talk about injuries along the route. I know a lot of people personally who have benefited from her services, and if you do end up with an injury out there or you're concerned about something out there, she's a great person to talk to. So definitely look her up. I'll put her information down in the show notes as well. Next up, book your ride to the southern terminus of the PCT. Probably the easiest way to do this is to book the PCT Southern Terminus shuttle. It picks up at the Old Town Transit Center in San Diego, and the cost is $75 per person, and you can book online ahead of time. It runs twice a day, starting in late February and running through late May at 9:30 a.m. and 2 p.m. It stops in several places along the way to help you get the supplies that you need, including REI and the Campo Green store and the post office and Cleef, which is a campground that's only, I believe, 0.7 away from the southern terminus of the PCT. I personally did not take the shuttle because I had an amazing trail angel come and pick me up and take me to the southern terminus. Shout out to Beacon. But I did have friends who took the shuttle and they highly recommended it. I also stayed at Cleef the night before I started my hike and had a pretty good experience. Next tip is to work on your fitness ahead of time. Yes, you can get fit on the trail. However, you're going to have a lot more fun and you're probably going to prevent more injuries if you get fit ahead of time. This can mean a variety of things for a variety of different people. Personally, ahead of time, I was doing a bunch of hiking because I usually live in Colorado. I was doing HIIT workouts. Shout out to Sean T, my favorite online trainer ever. And I was also specifically doing foot and ankle strengthening exercises using a wobble board. And I never got any injuries, so I guess those things worked. Hooray. Next up, visit the doctor, the dentist, the eye doctor, etc. to make sure you're in good health, to get your prescriptions refilled, all that good stuff before you set out on the PCT, because you never know what's going to happen and you want to go in feeling confident and healthy. And the last tip is to download the Far Out app and the PCT guide for the Far Out app. And also make sure that you download the files within the PCT app for offline use. There are a few different apps that you could be using for navigation, but I think Far Out is the best one because people are able to leave comments on everything along the trail. And so that's really helpful to know conditions ahead of time, to know if there's water available, especially in the desert. how conditions are looking in the High Sierra, which can get pretty hairy, especially when there's still snow and ice on the ground. So I just really, really recommend Far Out. I think it's an extremely helpful app. Maybe not like the best one of all time for actual navigation, but because of those comments, it's just above and beyond, especially because pretty much everybody is using Far Out these days. All right, those are my tips. If I forgot anything, leave them down in the comment section. And if you're not already following me, if you like through hiking, backpacking, hiking, and outdoor content, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And if you found this video helpful, also smash the like button. Thanks for being here, everybody, and I'll talk to you later.